The message came at 3 in the morning on a cold November night. It cut through every radio, every television, every phone on the planet at the same moment. Admiral Daniel Hayes was drinking coffee in the United Nations Space Command Center in Geneva when the screens around him went white and then filled with strange symbols. Dr. Linda Morrison, the language expert, worked fast. Her fingers moved across her keyboard as she fed the alien text through every translation program they had. Within minutes, she had something. "Primitive species of the third planet," she read aloud, her voice shaking. "You have been watched. You have been measured. You have been found unworthy. Leave your world within 1 day or face death. This is your final warning. There will be no talk." The room went silent. Secretary General Maria Santos gripped the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Around her stood military leaders from 17 countries, and every one of them looked scared. "1 day?" asked General Nathan Cole. "They want us to leave Earth in 1 day?" "That is what they say," Linda replied. Maria Santos shook her head. "We cannot move 8 billion people anywhere. We do not have the ships. We do not have anywhere to go." Admiral Hayes just set down his coffee cup. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and deep lines on his face from decades of service. He had fought in 3 wars and led men through situations that should have killed them all. But he had never faced anything like this. "Then we do not leave," he said calmly. "We fight." The alien ships had been spotted 3 weeks ago. 200 of them, hanging in space beyond the asteroid belt, like wolves waiting outside a village. Scientists had studied them day and night. They called themselves the Vethrani, and according to every signal they had intercepted, these creatures had conquered 47 worlds. They had never lost a war. Colonel Patricia Webb stepped forward. She was in charge of tactical planning, and her job was to know what they were up against. "Sir, with respect, we've seen what their weapons can do. One of their ships could burn a whole continent to glass in minutes. We have nothing that can match that." Hayes turned to face her. "You are right, Colonel. We cannot match them ship for ship. But tell me, what do you know about how the Vethrani fight?" Webb thought for a moment. "They approach information. They demand surrender. If the enemy does not surrender, they destroy them from a distance. They have done this 47 times. And how did those other species respond? They either gave up or tried to run." Hayes smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "That is the answer, Colonel. Every species they have faced has either rolled over or fled. They have never fought anyone who pushed back. They have never met humans." He walked to the window and looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond those clouds, death was waiting. But Daniel Hayes had spent his whole life looking death in the face. "The Vethrani think we are animals," he continued. "They think we will panic and scatter like deer. They do not understand what we are. We did not become the dominant species on this planet by being gentle. We are hunters. We chase prey across continents until they collapse from exhaustion. We killed mammoths with pointed sticks. We conquered every environment on Earth through pure stubbornness." He turned back to face the room. "They want to know what humanity is made of? Let us show them." Maria Santos looked around at the faces of her advisors. She saw fear, yes, but she also saw something else. A spark of defiance that had kept the human species alive through ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended them. "What do you need?" she asked. "Everything," Hayes replied. "Every ship, every weapon, every person who can fight. We have 24 hours to prepare for war." Within the hour, the word went out. Every nation on Earth received the same message from the United Nations. Humanity was under threat. And there would be no surrender. The response was unlike anything history had ever seen. Old enemies stopped fighting each other. Countries that had hated each other for centuries put aside their differences. Russia sent its entire space fleet to join with America. China opened its weapons programs to European scientists. India and Pakistan worked side by side for the first time in decades. Factories that had been making cars started making missiles. Research labs pushed experimental weapons from testing to production in hours instead of years. Men and women who had never held a gun volunteered by the millions. In a small apartment in Chicago, a young engineer named Victor Ruiz kissed his wife and 2 children goodbye. He had been called up to serve on one of the defense ships, and he knew he might never see them again. "Why do you have to go?" his daughter asked, tears running down her face. Victor knelt down and took her hands. "Because if I do not go, there will be no home to come back to. Because someone has to stand between the monsters and the people I love. And because I would rather die fighting than live knowing I did nothing." His wife held him tight. "Come back to us." "I will try," he said. It was the only promise he could make. Around the world, similar scenes played out. Mothers said goodbye to sons. Husbands held wives who might become widows. Children watched parents leave without knowing if they would ever return. But they went. Despite the fear, despite the odds, despite knowing that they were facing an enemy that had never lost, they went. Because that was what humans did. When pushed, they pushed back. When threatened, they fought. When told to surrender, they said no. Admiral Hayes watched the reports come in as humanity mobilized. Ships launched from every nation. Weapon systems came online. Soldiers took their positions in orbital platforms and ground-based batteries. "They gave us one day," he said quietly to Colonel Webb. "One day to show the galaxy what we really are. Do you think we can win, sir?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know. But I know this. Even if we lose, we will make them pay for every inch of ground. We will make them bleed for every life they take. And when they tell stories about Earth, they will speak of the species that looked at certain death and chose to fight anyway." He straightened his uniform and walked toward the command center. There was work to do. In less than 24 hours, the Vethrani would arrive, expecting easy prey. They would find hunters instead. Commander Samuel Grant stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiant, watching Earth grow smaller through the main window. He was 38 years old, young for such an important command, but these were not normal times. Normal times did not have alien fleets coming to destroy your world. "Commander, the fleet is ready," reported Lieutenant Karen Wells, his weapons officer. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. Grant had served with her for 3 years and trusted her completely. "How many ships do we have?" 47 vessels from 12 nations, sir. Admiral Hayes is asking for final confirmation." Grant nodded slowly. 47 ships against 200 alien warships. The math was not good. But math had never stopped humans before. "Tell the Admiral we are ready to fight." Below the bridge, in the engine room, Chief Engineer Victor Ruiz was running final checks on the ship's power systems. The Defiant was one of the newer carriers, equipped with an experimental drive that had been in testing for 15 years. It was meant to make space travel faster and easier. Now it would be used for war. A young ensign named Dorothy Blake watched him work. She was 22 years old, fresh out of training, and trying very hard not to show how scared she was. "Do you really think we have a chance?" she asked. Ruiz wiped grease from his hands and considered the question. "The Vethrani have better ships, better weapons, more experience. On paper, we should already be dead. That does not make me feel better." He smiled at her. "But paper does not win wars. Heart wins wars. Stubbornness wins wars. The will to keep fighting when everything says you should give up." He pointed at the engine core humming behind them. "And we have a few tricks they do not know about." "Like what?" "Like drives that can change direction faster than anything they have seen. Like weapons designed by people who have been thinking about this moment for decades. Like soldiers who know exactly what they are fighting for." He put a hand on her shoulder. "We are not going to win this by being stronger than them. We are going to win by being crazier than them." On Earth's surface, Dr. Catherine Price led a team of scientists in a secret facility in the Nevada desert. They had been working for 3 weeks straight, sleeping in shifts, living on coffee and determination. Their project was called the Solar Lance, a network of satellites designed to focus the sun's energy into a weapon dot. It was not finished. It might never be finished, but even at half power, it could hurt the enemy. "We need more time," Price told General Cole during their hourly call. "The targeting system is not accurate enough. If we fire now, we might hit our own ships." "You have 4 hours," Cole replied. His voice was tired but firm. "Make it work." Price wanted to scream at him. She wanted to explain that science did not care about deadlines, that you could not rush physics. But she looked at her team, men and women who had not seen their families in weeks, who had given everything for this moment, and she simply nodded. "We will make it work." They did. With 2 hours to spare, the Solar Lance came online. It was not perfect. It was not even close to what they had planned. But it was something. And something was better than nothing. As the clock counted down to the Vethrani arrival, Admiral Hayes broadcast a message to every ship in the fleet and every screen on Earth. His face appeared in homes and bunkers, in hospitals and schools, wherever people had gathered to watch their fate unfold. "In a few hours, we face an enemy that has never known defeat," he began. "They have conquered 47 worlds. They have destroyed civilizations older than humanity. They believe we will be number 48. He paused, letting the words settle. "They are wrong. We are the species that crossed oceans in boats made of wood. We are the species that survived ice ages with nothing but fire and fur. We are the species that looked at the moon and said, 'We will go there,' and we did. We are the species that refuses to accept defeat, refuses to surrender, refuses to lie down and die no matter how bad the odds." His voice grew stronger. "The Vethrani think they know what we are. They have watched us from a distance and decided we are weak. They see a young species that has not spread across the stars, and they think that means we are not ready. But we have been getting ready for this moment since the first human picked up a rock and decided to fight back against a predator. Today, we show them who we really are. Today, we show them that humans do not run. Humans do not beg. Humans fight. And when we fight until there is nothing left." Across the fleet, men and women listened to his words and felt something stir inside them. Fear was still there, but something else rose up alongside it. Pride, defiance, the stubborn human refusal to accept the impossible. Commander Grant watched his crew as the speech ended. He saw tears on some faces, determination on others. He saw people who knew they might die in the next few hours, but had decided to face that death standing up. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered. "Prepare for combat." The Defiant hummed with activity as everyone moved to their positions. Karen Wells ran final checks on the weapon systems. Victor Ruiz made sure the engines were ready to push beyond their limits. Dorothy Blake took her station and tried to remember everything she had learned in training. Outside the window, the stars waited. Somewhere among them, the Vethrani fleet was coming. 200 ships crewed by beings who had never lost, who had never faced a species that fought back, who had no idea what was about to hit them. On the bridge, Samuel Grant stood straight and tall. He thought about his parents back on Earth, about the little house where he had grown up, about all the ordinary moments that had made his life worth living. He was fighting for those moments, fighting so that others could have them too. "Commander," Karen Wool said quietly, "long-range sensors are picking up the enemy fleet. They will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Grant took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. "Signal all ships," he said. "Tell them to remember what they are fighting for. Tell them that whatever happens today, humanity does not go quietly." The fleet moved into position, 47 small ships against the darkness of space. They were outgunned and outnumbered. They were facing an enemy that should have terrified them into submission. Instead, they were ready to fight. The storm was about to break. Fleet Commander Xerath stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the primitive human ships move toward his fleet. He had conquered 11 worlds in his career. He had seen species beg for mercy. He had seen them try to run. He had never seen anything like this. "They are actually coming to fight us," he said to his tactical advisor, a younger officer named Keth. "Fewer than 50 ships against 200. They must know they cannot win." "Perhaps they hope for a quick death," Keth suggested. "Or perhaps they are simply stupid. Perhaps." Xerath studied the formation of the human fleet. It was strange. They were not holding a defensive line like most species did. Instead, they were spreading out, individual ships moving in different directions. "What are they doing?" "Unknown, Commander. Their movements do not match any tactical pattern in our records. It does not matter. Signal the fleet to maintain approach speed. We will crush them and then cleanse the planet as planned." The first shots came from the human ships, and they were not what Xerath expected. Instead of trying to hit from a distance where they had no chance, the humans fired everything they had at once, and then charged straight at the Vethrani formation. "They are attacking?" Keth sounded confused. "Their weapons are too weak to penetrate our shields at this range. They know that." Xerath felt the first small hint of unease. "They are not trying to kill us from range. They are trying to get close." Commander Grant watched his display as the Defiant screamed toward the enemy fleet at maximum speed. The ship shook with the force of acceleration, pushing the engines harder than they were designed to go. Around him, his crew held on to their stations and trusted him to know what he was doing. "Enemy ships are trying to track us," Karen Wells reported. "They are having trouble. Our movement patterns are confusing their targeting systems." "Good. That is the plan." Grant had spent hours studying what little they knew about Vethrani tactics. They fought with precision and order, always knowing where their enemies would be. They had never faced an opponent who moved like humans did, changing direction without warning, taking risks that seemed insane. "All ships, execute attack pattern 1, he ordered. "Make them bleed." The human fleet hit the Vethrani formation like a swarm of angry wasps. They did not try to line up for perfect shots. They did not follow predictable paths. They darted and weaved between the larger alien ships, firing at weak points, taking hits, and keeping going. The Vethrani had expected this to be easy. It was not. "Commander, we have lost 3 cruisers," Keth reported, his voice no longer calm. "The humans are using some kind of modified nuclear weapons. They are detonating them at close range, inside our shield frequencies. That should destroy their own ships. It is damaging them. But they keep coming." Xerath watched as another of his cruisers went dark, its hull torn open by a human vessel that had gotten close enough to unload its entire weapons load before pulling away. The human ship was bleeding atmosphere and on fire, but it was still moving, still fighting. "They are insane," he whispered Dot on the Defiant. Alarm screamed as the ship took hit after hit. Victor Ruiz worked frantically in the engine room, rerouting power, patching systems, keeping them alive through sheer stubbornness. "Hull breach on deck 4, Dorothy Blake called out. "We have lost the secondary weapons array. Seal the breach. Reroute power to primary weapons." Ruiz did not look up from his work. "As long as we can shoot and move, we stay in the fight. Our shields are down to 20%. Then we better not get hit again." On the bridge, Grant watched as the battle unfolded. They had surprised the Vethrani with their tactics, but the aliens were adapting. They were starting to predict human movements, starting to land more hits. "Commander, we have lost the Calgary and the Berlin," Karen Wells reported. "The Tokyo is requesting permission to withdraw. Heavy damage. Permission granted." Grant did not hesitate. "Get them out of here." But even as some ships fell back, others pushed forward. The destroyer Dawn, commanded by Captain Howard Flynn, led a charge directly at a cluster of Vethrani cruisers, drawing fire away from the damaged human ships. "Come on, you ugly monsters," Flynn broadcast on open channels. "Is that the best you can do? My grandmother hits harder than that." His ship was taking terrible damage, but Flynn kept taunting, kept fighting, kept drawing the enemy's attention. He gave 3 other human ships time to escape before a Vethrani blast finally broke the Dawn in half. His last transmission was laughter. Back on Earth, Dr. Catherine Price watched the battle from her control center, her heart breaking with every ship that went dark. But she had a job to do. "Solar Lance is charged and ready," she announced. "We have a firing solution." General Cole's voice came through the speaker. "Fire." The satellites activated, gathering solar energy and focusing it into a beam of pure destruction. It lanced across space, burning through one Vethrani cruiser, then another, then a third before the aliens could react. For a moment, there was silence. Then Keth spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Commander, they have a surface weapon. A beam weapon powered by their star." Zyrith stared at the display, showing 3 of his ships turned to slag. "That is not possible. They are primitives. They should not have anything like that. And yet they do." The battle had shifted. The Vethrani still outnumbered the humans badly, but they were no longer certain of victory. They had expected to swat aside a few primitive ships and then destroy a helpless world. Instead, they were bleeding. Grant saw the change in the enemy formation. They were pulling back slightly, regrouping, trying to understand what they were facing. "All ships, fall back to rally point," he ordered. "We need to regroup too." The human fleet pulled away, battered and bloody, but still alive. They had lost 8 ships in the first exchange, but they had destroyed 15 enemy vessels and damaged dozens more. It was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. As the 2 fleets separated, preparing for the next round, Zyrith stood on his bridge and felt something he had not felt in decades of conquest. Doubt that these humans were not like any species he had encountered. They did not fight like beings who wanted to live. They fought like beings who had already accepted death and decided to take as many enemies with them as possible. "What are they?" he asked quietly. Keth had no answer. Neither did anyone else on the bridge. But across space, on the damaged bridge of the Defiant, Samuel Grant allowed himself a small smile. They had survived the first round. They had hurt the enemy, and the battle was just beginning. "How are we doing?" he asked. Karen Wells checked her displays. "Weapons at 60%. Shields at 15%. Engines still functioning. Then we can still fight." He looked at the stars, at the enemy fleet regrouping in the distance. "Signal the fleet. Tell them we are not done yet. Tell them we are just getting started." The battle raged for 18 hours. Every hour brought new losses on both sides. Every hour brought new moments of courage and sacrifice that would be remembered for generations. Commander Grant lay on the floor of his ruined bridge, blood running down his face from a wound on his head. The Defiant had been hit by a Vethrani blast that tore through the hull like paper. Half his bridge crew was dead. The other half was fighting to keep the ship alive. "Commander, can you hear me?" Victor Ruiz knelt beside him, checking the wound. "You need medical attention. Later." Grant pushed himself up, ignoring the pain. "Status report. We have lost main engines and primary weapons. Life support is failing on 3 decks. We are dead in space." Grant looked at the view screen, cracked but still working. The battle was still going on around them. Human ships and Vethrani ships were locked in a dance of death, firing and dodging, dying and killing. "Can you give me anything? Thrusters? Backup power?" Ruiz thought for a moment. "I can give you maneuvering thrusters. Maybe enough power to move the ship. But we have no weapons, Commander. We cannot fight. We do not need weapons." Grant pulled up a damaged display, fighting to focus through the pain. "Look at the Vethrani flagship. It has been hanging back, controlling the battle. If we could get close enough." Ruiz understood immediately. His face went pale, but his voice stayed steady. "You want to ram them. Use our reactor as a bomb. It is all we have left." "That is a suicide mission. I know." Grant met his eyes. "I am not ordering anyone to stay. Get the crew to the escape pods." Ruiz was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down at the helm controls. "My children are on Earth. My wife is on Earth. Everything I love is down there. If ramming that flagship gives them a better chance, then that is what we do. Victor, you do not have to. Someone has to fly this ship. Someone has to make sure the reactor goes critical at the right moment." Ruiz started working the controls. "Besides, I am the only one who knows these engines well enough to pull this off." Grant wanted to argue. He wanted to order Ruiz to leave. But there was no time, and he knew Ruiz was right. He gripped the engineer's shoulder once, hard, then turned to the surviving crew. "Everyone else, escape pods. Now, that is an order." They went, most of them. A few stayed, refusing to leave their posts. Grant did not have time to argue with them either. As the Defiant began its slow journey toward the enemy flagship. The battle around Earth reached its peak. The human fleet had been cut down to 23 ships, but they had destroyed over 60 Vethrani vessels. No one in the galaxy had ever hurt the Vethrani this badly. Lieutenant Karen Wells had taken command of the cruiser Horizon after its captain died. She was exhausted, wounded in 3 places, and running on nothing but willpower. "All ships, focus fire on their carrier group," she ordered. "We need to give the Defiant time to reach the flagship." "Our shields are gone," replied Captain Marcus Lee of the destroyer Nightfall. "One more hit, and we are finished. Then make sure your last shot counts." That is all any of us can do. The Horizon and Nightfall charged together, 2 wounded ships against a dozen enemy vessels. It was suicide, and they knew it. But they also knew that every second they fought was another second for the Defiant to get closer to the flagship. The Vethrani fired everything they had at the charging ships. Beams of energy tore through space. The Nightfall took hit after hit, its hull breaking apart piece by piece. But Captain Lee kept the ship moving, kept firing, kept fighting. "Come on," he growled through gritted teeth. Come on, come on, come on." The Nightfall died screaming, its reactor breaching in a massive explosion that took 2 Vethrani cruisers with it. Lee's last words were a curse that would have made his mother blush. Karen. Wells watched her friend die and felt something cold settle in her chest. Not grief. Not yet. There would be time for grief later if she survived. Right now, there was only the mission. All weapons, fire on the nearest carrier. Everything we have. The Horizon opened up with everything left in its damaged weapons banks. The Vethrani carrier shields flickered and failed. A second later, the carrier exploded, but the return fire was too much. The horizon shuddered as blast after blast hit home. Karen Wells felt the deck tilt beneath her feet and knew her ship was done. "Abandon ship," she ordered. "Everyone to the pods." She was the last one off, staying until she was sure her crew had escaped. Her pod launched just as the horizon broke apart, spinning away into the darkness. On his flagship, Fleet Commander Zareth watched the crippled carrier approaching. The Defiant was moving slowly, barely under control, but it was still coming. Coming straight for him. "They mean to ram us," he said. "We can destroy them before they reach us," Keth assured him. "Our weapons are still fully operational. Can we?" Zareth pointed at the tactical display. "Look at them. They have been dying all day. Every time we kill one of their ships, another takes its place. Every time we think we have won, they find a way to hurt us again. They are just primitives. They are predators." Zareth's voice was harsh. "We made a mistake, Keth. We thought they were prey because they had not spread across the stars. But look at how they fight. Look at how they die. They are not weak. They were waiting, growing, getting ready." He watched the Defiant creep closer, its hull covered in scorch marks and holes, its engines barely working. Any sensible species would have surrendered by now. Any sensible species would have accepted defeat. But these humans did not know how to surrender. They did not know how to give up. They looked at certain death and decided to take their enemies with them. "Signal the fleet," Zareth ordered. "Full retreat, now. Commander?" Keth stared at him in shock. "We cannot retreat. We have never retreated. We have never faced anything like this." Zareth turned to face his advisor. "Think, Keth. If we stay, if we destroy them all, what happens next? Do you think they will forgive us? Do you think they will forget? They will rebuild. They will come for us. And they will never, ever stop." Keth's face went pale as he understood. "They will hunt us. They will hunt everyone. We woke something today. The kindest thing we can do for the galaxy is run and hope they do not follow." The order went out. Across the battlefield, Vethrani ships stopped firing. Their engines powered up for faster-than-light travel. One by one, they began to jump away. On the Defiant, Victor Ruiz stared at his sensors in disbelief. "Commander, they are leaving. The Vethrani are running." Grant could not believe it. He had been ready to die. He had accepted that his ship would be his tomb. And now the enemy was fleeing. "They are afraid," he said softly. "They finally understand what we are." Ruiz sat back in his chair and started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had faced death and survived, who had been willing to sacrifice everything and then discovered he did not have to. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." Around them, the surviving human ships watched the Vethrani fleet disappear into the darkness. 23 ships remained from the original 47. Thousands had died. But Earth was safe. The hunters had won. The sun rose over Earth the next morning, like it always did. But nothing was the same. People came out of shelters and bunkers, looking up at blue skies that should have been filled with alien ships. They checked their phones and screens and found news that seemed impossible. The Vethrani were gone. The enemy that had never lost a war had turned and run. Humanity had won. Admiral Daniel Hayes stood before the United Nations General Assembly 3 days later. He looked older than he had before the battle. The weight of 4,000 dead crew members showed in every line on his face. "We won," he said simply. But the cost was high. 31 ships destroyed. 4,000 brave men and women who will never come home. They gave their lives so that we could keep ours. The assembly was silent. Every person in the room knew someone who had died in the battle. But their sacrifice was not wasted, Hayes continued. We did more than save our world. We sent a message to the entire galaxy. A message that every species that has lived under Vethrani rule will hear. Humanity fought back. Humanity won. He pulled up footage from the battle. Human ships charging against impossible odds. The solar lands burning through enemy cruisers. The Vethrani fleet turning and running. For centuries, the Vethrani conquered without fear. Today, they fear us. And they should. Secretary General Maria Santos rose to speak. She looked as tired as Hayes, but her voice was strong. This victory belongs to everyone on Earth. Every nation. Every person who helped in any way. We came together as a species for the first time in history. We set aside our differences and fought as one. That is what saved us. She looked around at the faces of world leaders from every country. But we cannot go back to the way things were. We are not alone in the universe. Other species know we exist now. Some will fear us. Some will want to be our friends. Some will test us like the Vethrani did. We must be ready for all of them. She paused to let her words sink in. From this day forward, we are not separate nations fighting over pieces of one world. We are humanity. One species. One people. One force that the galaxy will never underestimate again. In the weeks that followed, the world changed in ways both big and small. Countries that had been enemies for generations began working together. Resources that had gone to weapons for fighting each other now went to building ships and defenses for the whole planet. Scientists who had worked in secret shared their knowledge openly. Commander Samuel Grant recovered from his injuries and received a promotion to Admiral. His first act was to rename the fleet's new flagship the Victor Ruiz, honoring the man who had been willing to die to save them all. Victor himself refused any special treatment. He went back to work as an engineer, uncomfortable with the hero's welcome he received everywhere he went. I just did my job, he told Dorothy Blake, who now served as his assistant. Anyone would have done the same thing. That is the point, is it not? Blake replied. Any human would have done it. That is what scared them. Karen Wells was promoted to captain and given command of a new ship. The first time she sat in the captain's chair, she thought about all the friends who had died so she could be there. She promised herself she would be worthy of their sacrifice. 6 months after the battle, humanity launched its first ship designed to travel to other stars. It was not a warship, but an explorer, named the New Horizon. Its mission was to make contact with other species and learn about the galaxy that had suddenly become so much larger. Dr. Catherine Price watched the launch from the control center where she had spent so many sleepless nights during the war. Tears ran down her face as the ship rose into the sky. We are really doing it, she whispered. We are going out there. General Cole stood beside her. Were we ever going to stop? They tried to push us back, and instead they pushed us forward. Made us grow up faster than we would have on our own. Do you think we are ready? Cole smiled. Ready or not, we are going. That is who we are. We do not wait until we feel ready. We jump in and figure it out along the way. As the New Horizon left Earth's orbit, its crew broadcast a message on every frequency. It was a message for the galaxy, from all of humanity. We are the people of Earth. We did not start this fight, but we finished it. We offer friendship to those who want it. We offer help to those who need it. And we offer a warning to those who would threaten us or anyone under our protection. We are the hunters. We do not stop. We do not give up. And we never forget. The message traveled out into space at the speed of light. It reached ships and stations and worlds that had watched the battle with growing amazement. Species that had lived in terror of the Vethrani heard it and felt something new. Something that felt a lot like hope. On 100 worlds, Beings who had been conquered and oppressed looked up at the stars and thought about the strange species that had beaten their masters. Maybe, they thought, things could change. Maybe there was a chance for freedom. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the retreating Vethrani fleet carried its own message back to their empire. A warning that would change how they saw the universe forever. They had come to Earth expecting easy prey. They had found hunters instead. Hunters who would not stop, would not surrender, would not accept defeat no matter how bad the odds. Fleet Commander Zyrith sat in his quarters and wrote his report. He wrote about the primitive ships that had charged his fleet without fear. He wrote about the weapons that should not have existed. He wrote about beings who chose death over submission and took their enemies with them when they fell. Do not go to Earth, he concluded. Do not threaten their world. Do not give them a reason to come for us. Because if you wake them, if you make them angry, they will not stop until they find you. They will chase you across the galaxy. They will hunt you down no matter how long it takes or how far you run. They are predators. They are hunters. And now they know there are other things to hunt among the stars. Back on Earth, the sun set on a world that had changed forever. People went back to their lives, but they walked a little taller now. They had faced extinction and survived. They had looked into the darkness and made the darkness blink first. Children played in parks and asked their parents about the battle. Soldiers came home to families who held them tight and cried with relief. Memorial services honored the dead while celebrating what their sacrifice had achieved. Admiral Hayes stood on a hill overlooking the ocean, watching the stars come out one by one. He thought about all the species out there among those stars. Species that now knew humans existed. Species that would have to decide whether to be friends or enemies. Whatever comes next, he said quietly to himself, we will be ready. Because that was what humans did. They adapted. They overcame. They refused to accept that anything was impossible. The Vethrani had given them one last warning. They had shown the galaxy who the hunters were, and this was only the beginning.